The creek ran thin that April morning, shaving a silver line through the limestone as if a giant finger had carved it overnight. Elias Gray knelt at the water, filling his canteen, when a wrong kind of sound slid through the oaks, nothing like a mockingbird's call or leaves talking to the wind. It was human, hurt, broken. He found her 20 yards downstream, crumpled against a fallen cottonwood, calico torn, mud thick on the hem, blood soaking the shoulder, dark, fresh, spreading. She looked young, no more than 19, with auburn hair catching the light like bright copper wire. Elias stepped closer. Her eyes flew open, winter blue, cold and sharp. She scraped backward against the log, one hand clamped on the wound, the other gripping her skirt. "Stay back," she rasped. "Just stay back." Elias stopped with his hands raised, palms easy. He'd seen that stare before, the kind soldiers wore after too much horror. Fear carved into bone. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, voice steady and low. "You're bleeding. Let me help." She laughed, glass sharp, wrong in the quiet morning. "Help me?" Her gaze slid past his shoulder, as if shadows had teeth. "If you've got any kindness at all, you'll just kill me quick. Don't make it slow." His chest went cold. Camp whispers from the war came back. Things no decent man wanted to picture. "Nobody's killing anybody," he said softly. "Let me see your shoulder." "No." She folded in on herself, knees up, making her body small. "You don't understand. If you touch me, you'll see what they did. Then you'll want to finish it. Try me." Something in his tone made the fear stutter. Elias settled into patience, the kind he'd learned in trenches, waiting out shell fire, quiet as a fisherman on a still bank. Minutes slid by. A red-tailed hawk wheeled above, crying to the bluffs. The creek murmured its way toward the Guadalupe, carrying last night's rain. At last, she spoke. "My name's Maeve. Maeve Tucker. Elias Gray." He tipped his hat brim. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Tucker." "Don't be." She winced and shifted. "Nothing pleasant about knowing me anymore." Elias took in the cut of her cheekbones, the stubborn jaw under all that fear. "Let me see the wound. I've got clean bandages in my saddlebags." She stared a long moment, then moving, like every inch ached, let her hand fall from the torn shoulder. The fabric was ragged, likely ripped on thorns. A bullet had furrowed the flesh, ugly, but not fatal if kept clean. He moved like a man soothing a spooked horse. When he touched the calico, Maeve flinched but stayed. "This will heal," he murmured. "Bullet just kissed you." "Lucky. Lucky," she echoed, the word bitter as creek mud. "That's me. Lucky Maeve Tucker." As he rinsed the cut with cold water, more truths showed themselves, fading yellow-green bruises. A split lip healed crooked. Then the torn fabric shifted on her leg and Elias froze. Burned into the pale skin of her inner thigh was a word, clean and deliberate, branded like a claim on a calf. The word read, "Property." Maeve yanked the dress down, face turning white as foam. "Now," she whispered, "now you see what I am." Elias sat back, jaw tight. In 4 years of war he'd seen men do terrible things, but this branding a woman was a different kind of evil. "I see what they did to you," he said at last. "Not what you are." Tears came silent, steady. Maeve covered her face, shoulders shaking. "They had a whole place," she said through her fingers. "Called it a stockyard, but it wasn't for cattle. Women who owed money, or got left with debts, or just got unlucky. When the war rolled through, they took us there and—" She couldn't finish. The words broke. She shuddered like memory itself, hurt to touch. Heat rose in Elias's chest. The same hot surge he'd felt at Shiloh when the guns took his regiment. But this wasn't war between armies. This was worse, men forgetting what it means to be human. "How'd you get out?" he asked quietly. "Fire," she said, eyes far away. 2 weeks back. A blaze started, maybe accident, maybe not. Guard ran for his own skin. I ran for mine. She glanced at her dress and bare, muddy feet. "Been running ever since." Elias stood and offered his hand. "You can stop running now." She stared at his palm like it might bite. "You don't understand. Men like that don't let their property walk away. They'll come. Let them come, he said, hand steady. They'll find me first. Something flickered in her face, not trust, not yet, but the faint start of it. She took his hand. Her fingers were cold and thin, her grip stubborn. He lifted her onto his bay mare, Ruth, then swung up behind. She sat stiff at first, every muscle ready to bolt. As they wound along deer trails and stony creek beds, the tension eased, a breath at a time. They reached his cabin in a cedar-ringed clearing, low and solid against the wind. Banked smoke curled from the chimney. He'd tended the coals before dawn. It isn't much, Elias said, helping her down. It's peaceful, she answered, and it sounded like the finest thing she could give. Inside, the place was spare and clean. Stone fireplace, rough-hewn table and 2 chairs, a bed in the corner, a shelf of books, pegs for rifle and coat. You take the bed, Elias said. I'll keep by the fire. She studied him, as if kindness were a language she'd forgotten. I don't understand you. Nothing to understand. He coaxed the coals. Flames climbed and danced. You're hurt, scared, and out of places. I've got space, food, and time. That's all. As she eased into the chair, a hand moved to smooth her skirt, hiding the brand without thinking. Elias knew it. Then, nothing about this would be simple. 3 days passed like a careful dance between wary creatures. Elias kept his routines, snares, garden, leather mending. Maeve watched from the window with the tired look of someone who'd learned that kindness often comes with a cost. She barely spoke, nodding at coffee, shaking her head at offers. The shoulder healed clean, anger red turning pink. But other wounds sat deeper. On the 4th morning, he found her by a cracked looking-glass he'd salvaged. She stared at her reflection like it was a stranger. I used to have longer hair, she said, the most she'd spoken since telling her name. Elias set down a bucket of fresh water. It grows back. They cut it first thing. Her fingers touched the ragged ends. Said long hair was vanity, and vanity had to be beaten out. She turned. Rawness lived in her eyes. You got scissors? I do. Want it trimmed proper? Clean-like? A tired smile ghosted across her face. I'm done looking like something the cat dragged in. Elias fetched his shaving kit. You sure? She sat by the fire. I want to see if there's anything left of me. He worked careful as any barber, trimming until auburn waves lay even, the firelight catching gold beneath the grime. When he finished, she looked younger, the hard angles softened. Better? She asked, touching the fresh-cut ends with trembling fingers. You look like a person again, Elias said, then immediately regretted it. I mean, I know what you mean. She crossed to the cracked mirror, studying her reflection. They tried to make us forget we were people, she whispered. Gave us numbers instead of names. Fed us slop like hogs. Her fingertip traced the line of her jaw. Some of the women, after a while, they started to believe it. Started thinking maybe that's all they were. Elias gathered the fallen hair and tossed it into the fire. It curled, black in the flames. What kept you from believing it? Silence stretched so long, he thought she wouldn't answer. Finally, she whispered, anger. Pure, stubborn anger. Every time they tried to break me, something inside burned hotter. I figured if I was going to die, I'd die knowing I was still Maeve Tucker, not a number. That evening, rain drummed on the cabin roof. Maeve surprised him by helping prepare supper, cutting vegetables while he fried salt pork. They worked in quiet, but it was a different kind now, companionable, not fearful. You got any family? She asked as they sat down to eat. Had a brother, Daniel, Elias said, pushing beans around on his plate. Lost him at Fredericksburg. Pa died of fever before I enlisted. Ma followed him 6 months later. I'm sorry. Long time ago now. He looked up. What about you? Maeve froze, fork halfway to her lips. Had parents. Small farm near Austin. Yankees came through in '63. Took everything they could carry. Burned the rest. Her voice cracked. Pa tried to stop them. They shot him. Ma lasted through the winter, but grief took her come spring. Elias's gut clenched. That when you ended up at that place? No. She set her fork down. Appetite gone. Went to Austin. Tried to find work. Met a man who said he'd help me. Turned out his help was selling women who had nowhere else to go. Her tone turned flat, lifeless. By the time I figured it out, it was too late. Rain hammered the roof harder, like it shared her rage. Elias wanted to ask more, but her trembling hands told him enough. "Tomorrow I'll ride to Bandera," he said. "Get supplies. Medicine for that shoulder. Maybe some fabric for a proper dress." Maeve's head snapped up. "You can't. Someone might recognize me." "Nobody will. Your hair's different now. Clean clothes. New face to the world. Bandera's 20 miles away. They won't expect you there." "You don't know these men," she whispered, fear creeping back. "They've got eyes everywhere. Debts. Favors. They put word out about runaway. Property. Offer rewards." Elias reached across the table, covering her cold fingers with his warm hand. "You can't hide here forever. Sooner or later, you've got to step back into the world." She stared at his hand. "Why are you doing this? Really?" Elias had been asking himself the same question for 4 days. He could have sent her toward Austin with a few dollars, gone back to his quiet life of traps and silence. "Maybe because I know what it's like to feel like the world has no place for you," he said at last. "After the war, I came home. Everything looked the same, but it wasn't. I felt like a ghost in my own life." He turned her hand over, seeing the thin scars, the work-worn calluses. "Maybe we both need to remember what it feels like to live again." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't pull away. "I don't know how to do that anymore. To feel anything but fear, or anger, or shame." "Then we'll figure it out," Elias said quietly. Together. That night, Elias lay on a bedroll near the fire, listening to the rain's steady whisper on the roof. Across the room, Maeve's soft breathing rose and fell. In the small hours, she cried out a broken sound that sliced through the dark. Elias was instantly awake. He found her sitting upright, eyes wide, staring into nothing. Her body was rigid, trembling. "Maeve," he whispered, keeping his voice gentle. "It's just a dream." She turned toward him, tears shining in the dim light. "I dreamed I was back there, could smell the smoke, hear the screams." She wrapped her arms tight around herself. "Sometimes I think I'll never escape. Part of me will always be there." Elias stared into the black window beyond the rain. "I used to dream of the war every night," he admitted. "Saw Daniel die over and over. Heard artillery every time a storm rolled in." He turned back to her. "Dreams fade. If you give them time, the real world gets stronger than the nightmares. You believe that?" "I'm starting to." Morning came bright and clean. Sunlight streamed through the windows, turning the wet world outside into glittering gold. Maeve stood at the doorway, breathing deep. "Smells like growing things. Spring's coming on strong." Elias joined her, leaning on the frame. "Few more weeks. Wildflowers will carpet the hills." A softness crept into her voice. "Pa used to say spring was God's way of reminding folks that nothing stays broken forever." Elias smiled faintly. "Smart man, your pa." She stepped onto the porch, lifting her face to the Sunday. "Maybe we could go to Bandera today, if you still want to." He studied her carefully. "You sure?" "No." She turned, and for the first time since the creek, she smiled a real smile that reached her eyes. "But I'm tired of being scared. If I'm going to live in this world again, I better start somewhere." She washed and dressed in Elias's spare shirt and trousers, cinched tight with rope. Her freshly trimmed hair was braided neatly. Though small and fragile-looking, there was determination in every movement. Elias checked his rifle one more time before strapping it to the saddle. "Ready?" Her hands trembled as she adjusted the hat he'd given her. "Ready as I'll ever be." They rode out together, leaving the hidden valley behind. For the first time, Elias thought he saw something in her face that wasn't fear or grief. It looked like courage. Bandera lay like a scatter of buildings tossed by careless hands. A dirt main street cut between a saloon, a blacksmith, a general store, and a few other shops. As they rode in, Elias felt Maeve stiffen behind him, her grip tightening on his belt. She'd pulled her hat low, but her terror was a living thing between them. "Easy," he murmured. "Just supplies. Then we're gone." The general store smelled of tobacco, kerosene, and pickled goods. Mrs. Henderson, the storekeeper's wife, looked up with polite curiosity. "Morning, Elias," she said. Her eyes slid to Maeve's borrowed clothes and pale face, but she asked no questions. "What can I get you?" "Iodine, bandages, some sewing cloth," Elias said, stepping slightly in front of Maeve. Mrs. Henderson gathered the supplies quickly, but her eyes flicked toward Maeve with quiet concern. Maeve stayed close to the door, silent, shoulders tight like a coiled spring. When Mrs. Henderson laid out bolts of calico, Maeve's voice surprised them both. "The blue one," she said softly, pointing to fabric printed with tiny white flowers. "If that's all right." Mrs. Henderson's face softened. "Of course, pretty choice. Brings out your eyes." Elias bought coffee, flour, and other basics. The simple, ordinary rhythm of shopping seemed to calm Maeve a little. She even paused to glance at some ribbons, though she didn't ask for any. They were loading purchases into the saddlebags when trouble found them. "Well, I'll be damned." The slurred voice cut across the street. Elias turned, seeing a broad, greasy-haired man weaving out of the saloon. The drunk's eyes narrowed on Maeve. "Thought I recognized that walk. Come here, girl. Let me get a better look at you." Maeve froze, breath hitching. Elias stepped between them, hand hovering near his pistol. "You got business with us, friend?" The drunk swayed closer, grinning. "Might do. Depends on whether this little filly's got a mark." "Kind of mark?" Elias's stomach sank. He knew exactly what mark the man meant. "Don't know what you're talking about," Elias said coldly. "Sure you don't." The man sneered. "Word's been spreading. Missing merchandise, high value. Some men offering good money for her return." Heads turned all up and down the street. Men stepped out of the saloon. Even the blacksmith paused mid-swing, hammer still in hand. "You're drunk," Elias snapped. "Go sleep it off." "Maybe." The man leered, trying to look past Elias at Maeve. "But I got eyes. That one's scared, hiding herself. Why don't you lift that skirt, sweetheart? Show us what's burned on that pretty leg." Maeve gasped, like she'd been struck. The fragile courage she'd built cracked, terror flooding back into her face. "That's enough," Elias growled, voice flat as a blade. But the drunk was emboldened by his growing audience. "Come on, darling. Just a quick peek. Prove me wrong, and we'll all go home happy. But if I'm right," he licked his lips, "there's men who'll pay handsomely for runaway stock." The word stock hung like poison in the air. Elias saw the crowd's mood shifting, some disgusted, others hungry for profit. "Last warning," Elias said. His hand settled fully on his pistol now. "Or what?" The drunk laughed harshly. "You gonna shoot me over some used up?" Elias's fist cut him off, slamming into his jaw. The drunk dropped like a sack of grain, dirt puffing up beneath him. Silence fell for one long heartbeat. A dog barked somewhere down the street. Then voices erupted, angry, curious, excited. The air turned dangerous. Elias grabbed Maeve's arm. "Come on, we're leaving." But a voice rang out behind them. "Hold on now. That man might have been drunk, but what if he was right? What if she is runaway property?" Another man added. "Could be reward money in it." Elias felt the weight of the crowd turning hostile. He swung Maeve onto the horse, then mounted behind her, his hand never straying far from his weapon. "Nobody needs to do anything foolish," he called, trying to hold the mob at bay. "We're just passing through." "Maybe you are," a deep voice rumbled. The blacksmith stepped forward, arms like tree trunks, hammer still in hand. "But maybe we ought to send word to the authorities. Let them sort this out." Elias's jaw tightened. "What authorities? Sheriff's been dead 6 months, you know that." "Then maybe we handle it ourselves," the blacksmith said, puffing up his chest. "Way I see it, if this girl's stolen property, returning her is the righteous thing to do." Behind Elias, Maeve made a small sound, part sob, part whimper. He felt her shaking against his back. Elias raised his voice so all could hear. "Look at her. Really, look. Does she seem like property to you? Something to be bought and sold?" The crowd wavered. A few men shifted uneasily, but greed was a strong chain. Looks don't matter, the blacksmith insisted. Law's the law. Theft is theft. Elias's voice turned hard as hammered iron. Whose law? The kind that says a woman can be branded like cattle. The kind that says humans are just coin to be traded. His words hit like a spark on dry grass. Some faces turned ashamed. Others stayed cold. Then an older rancher stepped forward. Samuel Cross, a man Elias recognized. Now, Elias, Cross said reasonably, we ain't talking right or wrong. Just talking about returning lost property to its rightful owner. Elias's glare could have cut stone. She belongs to herself. Same as you. Same as me. Fine sentiment, Cross said. But facts are facts. Someone paid for her. She's got value. Behind them, the drunk groaned, staggering to his feet. Rage twisted his face. Don't let him get away. That girl's marked, I swear it. Someone check her leg. The crowd pressed closer, a hungry edge in their movements. Violence hovered, ready to drop. Elias drew his pistol. Step back, all of you. Some men froze at the sight of the gun. Others didn't. The blacksmith hefted at his hammer. Cross's hand slid toward the rifle slung over his shoulder. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, son, Cross said. We're reasonable men. We'll treat her fair while we sort this out. Elias barked a harsh laugh. I've seen how reasonable men treat women they call property. Behind him, Maeve's voice trembled. Leave me. Save yourself. Not happening, Elias said without looking back. They edged toward the town limits. Tension coiled tight as wire. The drunk shouted one last warning. Run all you want. Word's already spreading. Jonah Bakesley's men will find you eventually. You can't hide stolen goods forever. The name struck Elias like a blow. Jonah Bakesley, a whisper of horror from army camps. A man who thrived on war's chaos, building empires from misery. Maeve clutched Elias's coat as he spurred their horse into a hard gallop, leaving Bandera behind in a storm of dust. Her tears soaked through his shirt as she sobbed. I'm sorry. I brought this on you. You've got nothing to be sorry for, Elias said, even as his mind raced, planning their next move. Bakesley knew now. And Bakesley wouldn't stop. They would need supplies, weapons, a place to make a stand. Whatever came next, Elias swore one thing. Maeve Tucker would never wear another man's brand again, even if it killed him to ensure it. For 3 uneasy days, they stayed hidden in the cabin. Elias kept watch by the window, rifle always ready. Maeve barely ate or spoke. The bolt of blue fabric they'd bought sat untouched on the table, a cruel reminder of shattered hopes. On the 4th morning, Elias made a choice that would haunt him. I need to go back, he said, checking his pistol for the 3rd time. Maeve looked up sharply from where she sat mending a shirt. Back where? Bandera. I need to know what we're up against. Who this Bakesley really is. How many men he's got. Fear sharpened her voice. It's too dangerous. What if someone recognizes you? What if they're waiting? Elias knelt beside her, taking her hands. I can't protect you if I don't know what's coming. Her grip tightened. And if you don't come back? The question hung between them like a blade. Elias met her eyes so young, yet carrying so much pain. I will come back. That's a promise. The ride to Bandera felt longer than before. Every rustling branch, every bird call made him tense. The town looked calm, dusty under the afternoon Sunday. Too calm. He left his horse at the stable and walked toward the general store, listening carefully. Mrs. Henderson greeted him, nervousness in her eyes. Didn't expect you back so soon. Forgot coffee, Elias lied, picking up a small bag. As she counted change, she leaned closer. Men have been asking questions. Professional men. Elias stilled. What kind of questions? About strangers. About a young woman with auburn hair. She glanced toward the saloon. One of 'em's in there now. Calls himself a lawman, but... She lowered her voice. Sheriff's badge can be bought, same as anything else. Elias thanked her, dread coiling in his gut. A false badge meant Bakesley had power and a plan. The saloon was dim and smoky, men hunched over cards and whiskey. At the bar stood a tall, silver-haired man with sharp, cold eyes. His fine clothes didn't match the dusty town. Elias knew instantly. Jonah Bakesley. He took a seat at a shadowed table, ordered whiskey, and listened. Bakesley's voice carried like a preacher's, smooth and practiced. "Civilization's been breaking down since the war," he declared. "Men stealing what isn't theirs, women forgetting their proper place." A local asked, "What kind of trouble you dealing with?" Bakesley's tone turned righteous. "A young woman led astray by criminals. She owed a debt legally bound, but instead of honoring it, she ran." Elias's jaw clenched. Bakesley was twisting the truth, painting Maeve as the villain. "Anyone seen her?" Bakesley continued. "Auburn hair, blue eyes, 19, traveling with a man." The drunk Elias had punched earlier stepped forward eagerly, jaw still swollen. "I seen her, with a fellow named Elias Gray." Bakesley's eyes gleamed like a hawk spotting prey. "Tell me about this man." As the drunk described their escape, Elias watched Bakesley carefully. Beneath the calm exterior, he saw cold satisfaction. "This Gray," Bakesley mused. "Does he have land? Somewhere to hide?" Another local piped up. "Cabin in the hills. Keeps to himself. War vet." Bakesley nodded slowly, like a predator circling its prey. "Another lost soul. Damaged by war. Men like that often confuse right and wrong." He turned to address the entire saloon, his voice smooth and commanding. "Gentlemen, I am prepared to offer a substantial reward for information. $50 for tips. $200 for actual recovery." A ripple went through the room. $200 was a fortune to these men. "Let me be clear," Bakesley continued, calm and calculated. "This isn't about cruelty. It's about maintaining order. The woman owes a legal debt, and debts must be paid." A voice from the back asked nervously, "And what happens when you find her?" Bakesley's thin smile sent a chill down Elias's spine. "She'll be returned to her rightful place. As for the man who stole her," he shrugged, "theft is theft." Elias had heard enough. He stood, moving casually toward the door. "You there." Bakesley's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "New face. What's your name?" Elias turned slowly, keeping his expression neutral. "Just passing through." Bakesley's eyes sharpened, cold and assessing. "You've got the look of a soldier. Which side?" "Union," Elias said. "No point in lying." Bakesley's smile was polite, not warm. "Ah, then you understand the importance of duty. Civilization depends on rules, on debts being honored." Elias's tone stayed calm. "Depends on the rules. Some orders ain't worth following." The room seemed to hold its breath. Bakesley's smile flickered, revealing the darkness beneath. "Interesting philosophy," he said softly. "Tell me, friend, your name?" For a heartbeat, Elias considered lying. But Bakesley's eyes told him the man already knew. Elias Gray. A murmur rippled through the saloon. Men shifted, glancing at one another. Bakesley's face remained composed, but satisfaction gleamed in his gaze. "So you're the one, traveling with a certain young woman?" "Don't know what you're talking about," Elias said flatly. Bakesley flipped open a silver pocket watch, pretending to check the time. "Good intentions lead men astray. I imagine you thought you were rescuing her." Elias's hand drifted closer to his gun. "But the truth," Bakesley went on smoothly, "is more complex. That young woman is legally bound property. By hiding her, you've committed theft." Elias's voice was like stone. "Funny kind of law that lets men own women like cattle." "The law is the law," Bakesley replied, patient as a teacher with a slow student. "Return her, and we forget this ever happened. And if I don't," Bakesley's smile sharpened like a knife, "then I'll exercise my authority as sheriff. Theft of valuable property is a hanging offense." The saloon went silent. Every man was watching now, breathless. Elias's gaze locked on the false badge pinned to Bakesley's chest. "Where'd you get that star?" Bakesley's composure cracked, just a fraction. "I am a legally appointed sheriff, with full authority in this territory." Elias's eyes narrowed. "Which territory is that exactly?" For the first time, a crack showed in Bakesley's polished composure. His smile wavered. I think we're done here, Bakesley said smoothly, recovering his calm. You have 24 hours to consider my generous offer. He shrugged, a gesture meant to seem casual, but his eyes glittered with threat. After that, I'll be forced to take direct action. Elias backed toward the door, never turning his back on Bakesley. You know where to find me. Indeed I do, Bakesley replied, his voice silky and cold. As Elias stepped into the sunlight, he heard Bakesley addressing the saloon again. Gentlemen, you've just witnessed the kind of lawlessness that threatens society itself. Elias didn't stay to hear more. He mounted up and rode hard for home, dust rising behind him. His mind raced. Bakesley wasn't just a bounty hunter. He was worse. He'd built a twisted system of legal slavery, hiding behind false contracts and corrupt law. And now that system was coming for them. By the time Elias reached the cabin, the sky was darkening. His horse lathered with sweat, his own shirt soaked through. Maeve appeared in the doorway, pale and wide-eyed. What did you learn? More than I wanted to, Elias said grimly, leading the horse to the corral. Bakesley's in Bandera, claims to be sheriff, but that badge is a lie. Maeve's hand stilled on the saddle blanket. He knows everything, Elias confirmed. He's giving us 24 hours to surrender you. Maeve's voice stayed steady, but fear lurked beneath. Then that's what we'll do. I won't have your blood on my conscience. Elias spun toward her. Nobody's surrendering anybody. We knew this day would come. They spent the evening preparing for war. Elias cleaned his rifle and pistol, counting ammunition twice. Maeve helped where she could, melting lead for bullets, tearing the blue cloth into bandages. How many men do you think he'll bring? She asked, voice tight. Elias loaded shells into his rifle, the metallic clicks sharp in the quiet cabin. Hard to say. 3 or 4, maybe more. Depends how badly he wants you back. Maeve's hands shook as she worked. At that place, when women tried to run, they'd bring them back, punish them while the rest of us were forced to watch. Her voice dropped to a whisper. They said it was to discourage rebellion, but I think Bakesley just enjoyed it. Elias's jaw clenched with cold rage. He won't lay a hand on you ever again. I promise. You can't promise that, Maeve snapped. You're one man against however many he brings. Elias met her gaze. Maybe so, but I'm one man with something worth fighting for. The words hung heavy between them. Maeve looked away, blinking back tears. The sound of distant hoofbeats shattered the moment. Elias froze, then snuffed the lantern. Too early, he muttered. He said 24 hours. 3 riders approached through the darkness, moving like men who knew exactly where they were headed. Back room, Elias hissed to Maeve. Bar the door. Don't come out, no matter what you hear. I'm not leaving you to face them alone, she argued, shaking her head fiercely. You are, if you want me to have a chance. He pressed his spare pistol into her hands. If they get past me, use this. And don't let them take you alive. Maeve's fingers closed around the gun, knuckles white. For a moment, her brave mask slipped, revealing the terrified girl beneath. If you don't come back. Elias kissed her forehead quickly. I will. The riders stopped just outside the faint glow of the cabin windows. Their low voices carried through the night. Elias crouched behind an overturned table, rifle ready, heart pounding steady as a drum. Elias Gray, a voice called, arrogant and young. We know you're in there. Come out, and we'll talk like civilized men. Elias stayed silent. These weren't Bakesley's direct men. The voice was too eager, too green. Hired guns looking for that reward. Another voice muttered. Maybe he ain't here. Maybe they already ran. Horse is still in the corral. The first speaker, Wade answered. He's here. Probably got that runaway girl with him too. So, what's the plan, Wade? We go in? Wade's tone hardened. Bakesley wants them alive if possible. But if they resist. His words faded as the men spread out, surrounding the cabin. Elias heard boots scuffing on the roof, one climbing for the chimney, another circling toward the back door. Then, the attack came. A window shattered as a flaming brand crashed through, setting curtains ablaze. At the same moment, boots slammed into both front and back doors. Elias fired through the front door. A shout of pain followed, Then a body hit the ground. The back door held for a heartbeat, then splintered. A stocky man charged through with a shotgun. Face twisted with fury. Elias rolled sideways as the shotgun boomed, buckshot tearing splinters from the wall. Coming up on one knee, Elias fired. His bullet caught the shotgunner in the shoulder, spinning him back into the dark. Smoke filled the cabin as the man on the roof dropped down the chimney straight into the banked coals. He screamed, scrambling out of the fireplace with his clothes smoldering, face blackened by soot. Elias lunged toward the bedroom door, desperate to block it before they reached Maeve. "There he is!" Wade's voice roared from the broken window. A shot slammed into Elias's side, knocking him hard against the wall. White-hot pain flared through his ribs. Gritting his teeth, Elias fired back blindly. Wade dove for cover, cursing. The soot-covered man raised a rifle, eyes wild. Elias tried to reach for his fallen weapon, but another bullet clipped his shoulder, sending him sprawling. Blood ran hot down his arm. Vision swimming. The room tilted, smoke stinging his eyes. Through the haze, Wade appeared, pistol aimed at Elias's chest. "Well, well," panted. "The famous Elias Gray. Doesn't look like much now, does he, boys?" The other two attackers emerged from the smoke, the shotgunner clutching his bleeding shoulder, and the soot-covered man, coughing and wild-eyed. They were battered, but standing. Elias lay bleeding on the floor, barely able to lift his head. "Where's the girl?" Wade barked. Elias glared, lips tight. Silence was his only weapon now. Wade's boot slammed into Elias's wounded side. Elias choked back a cry, agony ripping through him. "I asked you a question," Wade snarled. "Where is she?" Behind the bedroom door, Maeve stood frozen, tears streaking her soot-smudged face. Elias's words echoed in her head. "Don't let them take you alive." Then, with trembling resolve, she lifted the bar. The door creaked open. Maeve stepped out, both hands steady on the pistol Elias had given her. "Leave him alone," she said, her voice clear and cold. Wade turned, grinning like a wolf. "Well, there she is, the famous runaway. You led us on quite a chase, darling." I said leave him alone. Maeve's gun never wavered. "You want me? Here I am. Take me and go." Wade laughed cruelly. "Oh, we'll take you all right. But first," he aimed his pistol at Elias. "We deal with your hero. Can't have folks thinking they can steal from Mr. Bakesley and live to brag." Elias tried to rise, but his strength was gone. "Maeve, no," he gasped. "Please," Maeve begged, her mask cracking. "He was just trying to help me. This isn't his fight." It became his fight the second he touched Bakesley's property. Wade spat. He cocked the hammer of his pistol. "Don't worry, sweetheart. We'll make it quick." The shot that rang out wasn't Wade's. Maeve's bullet struck him square in the chest, lifting him off his feet. He slammed into the wall and slid down, leaving a dark smear. For one stunned moment, silence reigned, then chaos exploded. The shotgunner raised his weapon while the soot-covered man fumbled for his rifle. Maeve fired again, missing by inches. She dove sideways as buckshot shredded the doorframe where she'd been standing. Elias, fueled by sheer will, lunged for Wade's fallen pistol. His fingers closed around the grip, just as the rifleman took aim at Maeve. Elias's shot dropped the rifleman instantly. The shotgunner saw both his companions dead and broke, fleeing out the back without a glance behind. Maeve rushed to Elias's side, her hands already pressing against his wounds. "How bad?" she demanded, voice trembling. Elias coughed, tasting blood. "Bad enough. But I'll live. Maybe. Question is, what do we do now?" Outside, hoofbeats pounded away into the night. The last gunman was running to Bakesley, no doubt to report the failed raid. Maeve's face hardened with fierce resolve. "We run. Patch you up, and we run as far and as fast as we can." Elias sagged against her, dizzy and pale. "Can't run forever. Then we run until we can't run anymore," Maeve said fiercely. Her voice was trembling, but her determination burned hotter than fear. "We don't give up. We don't let them win." She hauled Elias upright, his weight heavy against her small frame. Step by step, She guided him out of the smoke-choked cabin. Outside, the bodies of Wade and his men lay in the dirt, silent witnesses to what had just unfolded. Elias's breath came shallow and ragged. His shirt was soaked crimson, blood seeping steadily through makeshift bandages. They mounted Ruth, Elias slumping forward in the saddle. Maeve swung up behind, clutching him tight as she urged the horse into a gallop. The night air whipped past, cold and sharp, carrying the iron scent of blood. They made it 2 miles before Elias sagged dangerously to one side. "Elias!" Maeve cried, hauling him upright just in time to keep him from falling. "We have to stop, you're bleeding too much." She spotted a spring bubbling between limestone rocks, shaded by live oaks. "Hold on," she whispered desperately, steering the horse toward shelter. Once there, she half-carried, half him to the ground. His face was gray as ash, lips pale. "Can't go much further," Elias rasped, barely conscious. Maeve's hands worked frantically, stripping fabric to press against his wounds. The bullet hole in his side had reopened during the ride. Blood poured through her fingers. "We have to keep moving," she said, though deep down she knew he couldn't. "That man who escaped, he's bringing Bakesley. They'll be here soon." Elias leaned weakly against a tree trunk. "I'm no good to you like this. Leave me here. Take the horse. Go." "No." Maeve's voice cracked like a whip. "I'm not leaving you. Be reasonable." Elias gasped. "You have a chance alone. They want you alive, they won't shoot to kill. But me." He coughed violently, flecks of blood on his lips. "I'm just an obstacle now." Maeve soaked a cloth in the cold spring water and wiped away some of the blood. "Maybe I'm done running," she said fiercely. "Maybe I'm done letting other people decide my fate. This isn't the time for heroics," Elias groaned. But she cut him off. "Isn't it?" Her eyes blazed with something he hadn't seen before, not just courage, but defiance. "You told me once I was stronger than what they did to me. Maybe it's time I proved it." Elias stared at her through the haze of pain, awe, and fear warring in his chest. Then they both heard it, the sound of horses moving through the trees. Not 1 or 2. Many. The low, steady drumbeat of hooves drawing closer. "They're here," Maeve whispered, her blood running cold. Through the pre-dawn darkness, torches flickered like angry fireflies weaving through the forest. Elias counted at least 6 distinct lights, maybe more. Bakesley had come in force this time. Elias gripped her hand with what strength he had left. "They'll want to take you alive. They'll use me to control you. Don't let them." "Elias." Her voice broke, but he squeezed her hand hard. "Promise me. Whatever they threaten, don't surrender because of me. If you do, everything we fought for, everything, will be for nothing." The torches were closer now. Voices shouted commands in the darkness, boots thudding as the men fanned out in a hunting circle. "I promise," Maeve said, though the words felt like poison on her tongue. Within minutes, torchlight lit the clearing like a twisted sunrise. Dark figures emerged from the trees, armed men with hard, cold faces. At their center strode Jonah Bakesley, impeccably dressed despite the mud and rough terrain, his silver hair gleaming like a crown. Behind him came 5 men with rifles drawn. Not local bounty hunters this time, but professional killers, Bakesley's true army. "Mr. Gray," Bakesley said with a mockery of politeness, his voice carrying easily through the night. "You look unwell. Perhaps you should have accepted my generous offer when you had the chance." Elias struggled to rise, but his body betrayed him. He collapsed back to his knees, blood soaking his shirt. 2 rifles immediately leveled at his head, daring him to move again. Bakesley's gaze shifted to Maeve, his smile sharp and cold. "And Miss Tucker, what a pleasure to see you again." Maeve's hand hovered near the pistol at her belt. "Stay back." Bakesley raised one hand in false reassurance. "There's no need for dramatics, my dear. You know why I'm here. You know what I want. I'm not going back to that place," she said, her voice shaking. "My dear girl, you never left," Bakesley purred. "Oh, you may have fled in my body, but legally, you remain my property until your debt is satisfied." "She's not property," Elias growled, though the effort sent pain lancing through him. "People aren't property." Bakesley's laugh was like dry leaves in a cold wind. spoken like a true idealist. Tell me, Mr. Gray, what do you call it when someone consumes goods and services they cannot pay for? In civilized society, we call that debt. You call it slavery, Maeve spat, her rage barely contained. Branding women like cattle, locking them up like animals. Bakesley stepped closer, his men fanning out to cut off escape. You signed papers, Miss Tucker. You agreed to work off your family's obligations. Liar. I never signed anything. But your mother did, Bakesley said smoothly, reaching into his coat. He withdrew a folded document and waved it like a weapon. Before she died, she signed over your services to cover her medical expenses and burial costs. All perfectly legal. Maeve's face went pale as bone. No. She would never. She would, Bakesley said with cold satisfaction. A mother's love is a powerful thing. She ensured her daughter's survival, though, admittedly, the work was unpleasant. Elias's voice was hoarse with fury. Debt doesn't justify what you did to her or to the others. I provided food, shelter, and purpose, Bakesley argued, as if he were discussing business, not human lives. If the work was demanding, well, life is demanding. You branded her, Elias roared, his strength breaking through for a moment. You marked her like livestock. Bakesley's eyes glittered. I marked my property to prevent theft. A reasonable precaution. He gestured toward Elias. And speaking of theft by hiding her, you've committed a capital crime. Theft of valuable property. Harboring a fugitive. Conspiracy to defraud. These are hanging offenses. One of Bakesley's men stepped forward, rifle barrel pressing against Elias's temple. Want me to save the territory the cost of a trial, boss? Bakesley lifted a hand, stopping him. Not yet. Our dear Miss Tucker needs to understand the consequences of continued rebellion. He turned back to Maeve, his voice suddenly soft, almost coaxing. You see, every day you remain in unlawful freedom adds interest to your debt. By my calculations, your current obligation sits at roughly $3,000. Maeve's breath caught. How would that take to work off? Bakesley smiled like a viper. At the standard rate? 15 years of service. The number hit like a physical blow. 15 years by the end of it. She'd be broken, body and soul. Bakesley's cold smile widened. Of course I'm a reasonable man. Return voluntarily, and I'll reduce it to 10 years. His tone turned sharp as a knife. Refuse, and Mr. Gray's continued existence becomes precarious. Maeve's gaze darted to Elias. His skin was pale as ashes, his chest rising and falling in shallow, ragged breaths. He didn't have days, maybe not even hours. Bakesley's threat wasn't just real, it was inevitable. What guarantee do I have? Maeve asked, her voice trembling but clear. Bakesley's eyebrows arched. Guarantee? If I go with you, she said through clenched teeth. How do I know you won't kill him anyway? Bakesley placed a hand over his heart, mocking solemnity. You have my word as a gentleman. Your word isn't worth the paper it's written on, she snapped. Perhaps not, he said with a smirk, but it's all the currency I offer. He pulled out his silver pocket watch, flipping it open with a click. You have 1 minute to decide. After that, I'll assume you prefer to watch him die slowly. The clearing fell silent except for Elias's ragged breathing and the distant call of a mockingbird greeting dawn. Maeve's mind spun. 10 years of degradation, of being marked and owned. 10 years of losing herself piece by piece. But Elias would live. If Bakesley kept his word. Time's up, Bakesley announced coldly. Samuel, if you would, wait. Maeve's voice cut through the air like a blade. I'll come with you. No, Elias rasped, his voice a broken plea. Maeve, don't. She raised her voice. Louder, clearer. I said I'll come with you. But first, her eyes softened as she looked at Elias. I want to say goodbye. Bakesley gave a gracious little nod. Of course. A moment of sentiment is understandable. Maeve knelt beside Elias, her hand finding his. To the watching men, it was a farewell between doomed lovers. But her lips brushed his ear, whispering words so soft only he could hear. Trust me. When I move, be ready. Elias's eyes widened in shock and fear. But before he could respond, she was on her feet. Maeve turned to Bakesley, standing tall, her blue eyes blazing with fury and defiance. "You want your property back?" she shouted. "Come and take it." Her pistol was in her hand like lightning, faster than anyone could react. The shot cracked through the clearing. Bakesley staggered, clutching his chest, crimson blooming across his fine coat. Chaos erupted. For a split second, the men froze in stunned disbelief. Then everything exploded into motion shouts, gunfire, and the acrid bite of smoke. "Take her alive," Bakesley bellowed, his voice ragged but still commanding. "I want her alive." But his authority was bleeding out with his lifeblood. His hired guns hesitated, fear warring with greed. Elias rolled behind a limestone outcropping, ignoring the screaming pain in his body. 2 quick shots dropped the nearest gunman before they could regroup. Maeve dove behind a massive oak tree as bullets tore through the bark, splinters flying into her hair and eyes. Her heart thundered, but her hands were steady as she checked the cylinder of her pistol. 3 bullets left. "Samuel!" Bakesley shouted, his voice hoarse with rage and pain. "Finish this!" From behind a cedar tree stepped a tall, scarred man with cold, murderous eyes. This was Samuel Bakesley's lieutenant, and clearly the most dangerous man here. "Come on out, girl," Samuel called, voice mocking. "Boss wants to talk to you." "I've heard enough of his talk," Maeve shouted back, defiance burning in her tone. Samuel laughed, dark and harsh. "You killed a lawman, sweetheart. That's a hanging offense even for a woman." "He wasn't a lawman," Maeve growled. "Just a monster with a fake badge." Samuel's grin widened. "Law is whatever the man with the most guns says it is. And right now, that man is me." A shot cracked from the left flank. Bark exploded inches from Maeve's head. Another gunman was circling to flank them. She fired back blindly, hearing a curse but not knowing if she'd hit. Elias slumped against the rocks, barely conscious, his breath shallow and wet. "Maeve," he whispered. "How many left?" "Too many," she answered, biting back tears. She glanced at him and saw how pale he'd become, how much blood soaked his bandages. Elias managed a weak, determined smile. "Then we better make our shots count." Bullets rained from both sides now, forcing Maeve and Elias back toward the spring. Their cover was disappearing fast. Samuel's voice rang out again. "This is your last chance, girl. Come out now, and maybe we'll make your friend's death quick." Maeve's stomach clenched, but she stayed silent, clutching her pistol tight. Just as Samuel raised his rifle to signal the final rush, a new sound split the chaos hoofbeats. Fast. Many. "What the hell?" Samuel snarled, whirling toward the noise. From the forest thundered a group of riders, rifles blazing. The first shots dropped 2 of Bakesley's, all men before they knew what hit them. Through the smoke and torchlight, Maeve recognized the leader, Samuel Cross, the rancher from Bandera. His face was grim, his rifle steady as he shouted, "That's far enough, Bakesley." Bakesley, and staggering, turned in shock. "Cross? What are you doing?" Cross dismounted in one smooth motion. "Cleaning up a mistake," he said flatly. "Should have done it the day you came to town with your lies." "Lies?" he gasped, rage twisting his features. "I built civilization out here. You're nothing but—" A single shot cut him off. Bakesley collapsed forward, face down among the wildflowers he'd soiled with his cruelty. "Samuel," the lieutenant roared in fury, swinging his rifle toward Maeve. But Cross was faster. His bullet hit Samuel square in the chest, dropping him like a felled tree. The remaining gunmen threw down their weapons, hands raised high. The tide had turned completely. Maeve stood trembling, her pistol still raised, staring at Bakesley's lifeless body. It didn't feel real, not yet. Elias slumped sideways, whispering her name, and she dropped to her knees beside him, clutching his hand as relief and terror battled inside her. Cross knelt beside Elias, his sharp eyes taking in the damage. "Ma'am, your man needs a doctor," he said to Maeve. "My boy Jacob's got field training from the war. He can keep him breathing till we get to town." One of Cross's men, a young, steady-handed rider, dismounted and rushed over with a worn medical kit. "Why?" Maeve choked out, still clutching Elias's hand. Why did you come back for us? Cross removed his hat, his face lined with grief and fury. Because we finally heard what really happened at that place Bakesley was running. His voice dropped, thick with disgust. Heard about what he did to those women. What he planned to do to more. He glanced at the bodies scattered around the clearing. Some lines that you don't cross. Not if you want to call yourself a man. Jacob worked quickly, cleaning Elias's wounds with clean water and steady hands. Got to stop the bleeding first. He's lost a lot of blood. Maeve hovered, desperate and helpless. Will he live? Jacob's tone was calm but honest. If we get him to town soon and keep those wounds clean, he's got a fighting chance. Cross turned to one of his men. Round up those prisoners. Tie 'em tight. We'll deliver 'em to the Rangers with a full report. Maeve's gaze fell on Bakesley's lifeless form. Even in death, his face looked cruel, as though he'd never known a kind thought. Cross knelt beside the body, rifling through Bakesley's coat until he found a folded bundle of papers. These are the documents he used to claim ownership of you, Cross said grimly, passing them to Maeve. Her hands shook as she unfolded the pages, terrified of what she'd see. Cross studied the papers in the growing dawn light. Forged, he declared, his voice ringing with certainty. Pretty good forgeries, but fakes all the same. Maeve's breath caught. You mean, my mother? She never? Cross's expression softened. No, miss. She never signed anything. This whole scheme was a lie. Bakesley's way to trap vulnerable women. The weight Maeve had been carrying for years seemed to crash to the ground all at once. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered. I'm free. I'm really free. Cross nodded firmly. Legally and properly free. The Rangers will see to that. Behind them, the first rays of sunrise painted the clearing gold. The nightmare was finally over. Maeve knelt beside Elias, brushing sweat-damp hair from his face. You hear that? She whispered. We're free. You saved me. Elias's lips curved in a faint, tired smile. Worth it. Every bullet. He rasped. Jacob finished binding Elias's wounds. We need to move now. He won't survive another hour out here. The men fashioned a stretcher from blankets and sturdy branches. They lifted Elias carefully, Maeve walking beside him every step. Cross held out a small leather pouch to Maeve. Found this in Bakesley's saddlebag. Gold coin and paper money. Consider it compensation for what you've endured. Maeve stared at the pouch, then at Bakesley's still form. The man who'd tried to own her was gone forever. His power over her broken. I don't want his money, she said bitterly. But maybe I can use it to start something new. That's the spirit, Cross said with approval. Now let's get your man to safety. The ride back to Bandera was slow and careful. Villagers lined the dusty main street as they returned, eyes wide with shock and curiosity. Mrs. Henderson rushed forward, tears in her eyes. Is there anything I can do? She asked Maeve. Maeve held the bolt of blue cloth she'd chosen days ago. Yes, she said with a trembling smile. Help me make a proper dress. Mrs. Henderson clasped Maeve's hands, her warm smile breaking through the tension. No charge for the cloth, dear, she said softly. Consider it a gift. Maeve's throat tightened with gratitude. For the first time in years, she felt seen not as property, not as a victim, but as a person. Cross's men carried Elias into the doctor's office while the crowd watched in hushed silence. Maeve paused at the threshold, glancing back over her shoulder. Behind her lay the nightmare she had fled. Ahead was an unknown future, filled with both promise and uncertainty. She looked down at her hands, still stained with soot and gunpowder from the final battle. These were the hands that had ended Bakesley's reign of terror, the hands of a survivor. Instead of guilt, Maeve felt strength blooming deep inside her chest. For the first time, she truly owned herself. Come inside, the doctor urged gently. We've got the work to do if we're going to save him. Maeve followed Elias inside, ready to fight for him as fiercely as he had fought for her. 6 weeks passed, marked by slow healing and quiet rebuilding. The wildflowers bloomed across the Texas hills, bluebonnets spreading like a carpet of fallen sky. Elias still moved carefully, his shoulder aching whenever the weather turned damp. But he was alive, whole. Each day, Maeve tended the small garden outside their rebuilt cabin, her laughter mingling with the hum of bees and the whisper of the wind. She wore the blue dress she had sewn with Mrs. Henderson's help, her auburn hair shining in the sunlight. "Tomatoes are coming along fine," she called to Elias one bright morning, brushing dirt from her hands. "Should have fresh ones by July." "Good," Elias said, stepping onto the porch. He smiled at the sight of her, vibrant and strong. "Been thinking about that trip to San Antonio we talked about. Maybe August, when the heat breaks." Their plans had started small, simple errands, quiet days, but now they dreamed of bigger things. Traveling, seeing new towns, maybe even starting a family. Elias reached into his pocket, a strange mixture of nerves and hope twisting inside him. "I've got something for you." Maeve looked up, curiosity lighting her blue eyes. "What kind of something?" Elias pulled out a small ring, hammered from the brass of his last bullet cartridge from the war. The metal was imperfect, but it caught the morning light beautifully. Maeve gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth. "Elias Gray." Elias dropped to one knee right there in the garden soil. "I know I'm not much of a catch," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "But I love you more than I ever thought possible." Tears filled her eyes, blurring the world around her. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, I'll marry you." Laughter bubbled through her tears, wild and joyous. "Though I should warn you, I come with considerable baggage." Elias slipped the ring onto her finger, his rough hands trembling. "We all do," he said softly. "The question is whether we're strong enough to carry it together." They held each other tightly, the scent of wildflowers all around them. For once, the world felt safe. "When?" Maeve asked, gazing at the ring, watching it catch the Sunday. "As soon as we can arrange it proper," Elias replied. "There's a little church over in Comfort. Whitewashed walls, bell tower. I'd like that." Maeve smiled through happy tears. "I would too." "Think folks will come?" Elias chuckled. "More than you might expect. This whole town saw what you went through. They'll be there." The future stretched before them like the endless Texas sky, wide and full of promise. For the first time, Maeve believed she had a place in it, and for Elias, every sunrise was a reminder that love could grow even in the soil of pain and loss. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and golden, a soft breeze carrying the scent of wildflowers across the valley. The little whitewashed church in Comfort gleamed in the sunlight, its bell tower ringing out over the rolling hills. Inside the small anteroom, Maeve stood before a mirror, adjusting the dress she'd sewn with Mrs. Henderson's help. It was simple but beautiful, with delicate pearl buttons saved from the storekeeper's grandmother's gown. Martha Cross pinned tiny bluebonnets into Maeve's hair, her hands gentle and sure. "You look radiant, dear," she said, smiling warmly. Maeve gazed at her reflection. For a moment, she didn't recognize the woman staring back, a woman free of chains, wearing a dress instead of rags, her eyes filled with hope instead of fear. "Mrs. Henderson entered, holding out a cameo brooch. "This has been in my family for 3 generations. Today, it belongs to you." Tears pricked Maeve's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, fastening the heirloom at her throat. Through the doorway, she glimpsed the church filling with people. Faces familiar and new neighbors, townsfolk, even strangers who'd heard of her courage. "Nervous?" Martha asked gently. Maeve shook her head, a serene smile curving her lips. "No. For the first time in my life, I'm ready." The ceremony began with Reverend Hayes speaking of love not as fate, but as a choice. Build something beautiful from the wreckage of the past. When it came time for vows, Elias spoke first, his voice steady but rich with emotion. "Maeve, I promise to stand with you against whatever comes. To see you for who you are, not what others tried to make you. To love the strength that saved you and the gentleness that heals me." Tears streamed down Maeve's cheeks as she answered. "Elias, I promise to build a life with you based on choice, not fear. To trust in the future we're creating. To love you not, despite the scars we carry, but because they led us to each other." When Reverend Hayes pronounced them husband and wife, the church erupted in cheers and applause. Elias kissed her, and for the first time in her life, Maeve felt celebrated rather than hidden. The reception at the Cross Ranch was lively and joyful. Lanterns hung from oak branches, a fiddler played bright tunes, and children ran laughing between tables laden with food. Elias and Maeve sat together on the porch, watching their friends and neighbors dance under the starlit sky. "No regrets?" Elias asked quietly, his thumb brushing over the brass ring on her finger. Maeve considered. 6 months ago, she might have said yes, but now she shook her head firmly. "No regrets. We did what we had to do to be free." Elias's gaze softened. "Think Bakesley's people will leave us alone now?" Maeve's lips curved in a wry smile. "Cross said the Rangers shut down 3 more of his stockyards in the last month. Whatever. Empire Bakesley built, it's falling apart." They sat in comfortable silence, the sounds of laughter and music washing over them like a healing tide. Finally, Maeve turned to Elias, her voice tender. "Thank you." He tilted his head, puzzled. "For what?" "For seeing me. For reminding me I'm more than what was done to me." Her blue eyes shone in the lantern light. "For helping me believe in a future." Elias cupped her face gently. "You were always Maeve Tucker, strong, stubborn, beautiful. I just helped you see it." She smiled through happy tears. "Maeve Gray now." "Maeve Gray," Elias echoed, grinning. "Has a nice ring to it." That night, beneath a sky full of stars, they rode home together. Their little cabin waited, warm light glowing through its windows, ready for a new beginning. As dawn broke over the hills, Elias and Maeve stood hand in hand on their porch, watching the world awaken. The war was over. The running was over. And at last, they were free together.